Alright, last time we wanted to check if we could have been sailors in Magellan's time. The answer to question 1, what would you wear, is C. Sailors didn't care about being trendy. Their clothes were big and baggy so they could move about and work easily. They weren't that bothered about keeping clean. Ships didn't have washing machines. So if your clothes got drenched or dirty, you just had to pong. The answer to question 2, where would you sleep? Sorry, you only got to sleep on a bed if you were a high-up ship's officer. And then it wasn't really a bed at all, just a lumpy pile of moldy old straw. Ordinary sailors kept wherever they could find a space. And you could forget about having a long lie-in. You had to wake up every 4 hours to take your turn at keeping watch. You'd be flogged if you forgot. And the answer to question 3, where would you go to the toilet? Yep, I'm afraid it's true. There was a plank you could sit on, but it was horribly hazardous, especially if the weather was bad. But many sailors didn't bother walking the plank. They went in the bilge instead, a layer of stinking water below deck that helped to balance the boat. You needed a strong stomach. The smell was unspeakable. Here's an earth-shattering fact for you. A part-time pirate led the second expedition successfully to sail around the world. In December 1577, swashbuckling English sailor Francis Drake set off from Plymouth, England. His official instructions from Queen Elizabeth I herself were to claim new lands for England. But secretly, she wanted him to plunder Spanish ships full of priceless treasure from South America. Spain was England's arch enemy at the time. Which is precisely what dashing Drake did. By the time he returned home 3 years later, his ships were crammed full of rich pickings: gold, silver, pearls, silk, posh china, and spices. No wonder the Queen was pleased. She rewarded him with a knighthood, and his fame and fortune were guaranteed. If a sailor's life sounds too sickening, why not leave it to an expert instead? Like the brilliant sailor of the next section. He wasn't interested in money or trade routes. No, he wanted to see the world and learn more about horrible geography. Hard to believe, I know. Courageous Cook. Top British sailor James Cook was undoubtedly intrepid and brave. In the 18th century, he had led 3 of the greatest voyages of exploration ever made. Not bad for a lad from a humble family who started off selling fruit and vegetables. Here we have him, James Cook. James was born in England. His dad worked on a farm, and his dad's boss paid for young James to go to school. When James was 12, he went to work in a grocer's shop. But he didn't give a fig about boring fruit and veg, and got a job on a coal ship. Later, he joined the British Royal Navy and was promoted to lieutenant. In his spare time, James managed to teach himself math and surveying. What a swot! Everyone said he was a brilliant sailor and a born leader, which is why in 1768 he was picked to lead a daring new scientific expedition to the far-flung South Pacific. The first expedition to set sail in the name of science rather than trade was led by French navigator and mathematician Louis-Antoine de Bougainville. In 1766, 2 years before Cook set off, he left France with a boatload of scientists to sail around the world. He was gone for 2 years. But he returned with hundreds of specimens of amazing new plants and animals, including a beautiful bloomer from South America, which is now named Bougainvillea in his honor. Pretty, pretty flowers he found. First voyage, 1768 to 1771. The Navy wanted Cook to watch the planet Venus as it moved across the face of the sun. This was important for measuring the distance between the Earth and the sun and for making navigation more accurate. Trouble was, this cosmic combination only happened twice every 100 years, so it was crucial to be in the right place at the right time. And the right place in 1769 turned out to be the island of Tahiti in the South Pacific Ocean. At least, those were the official plans. Burning a hole in his coat pocket, however, Cook had an envelope marked Top Secret. Inside were top secret orders from the British government, which curious Cook wasn't allowed to read until he reached Tahiti. Don't worry, you won't have to wait that long. Here's a sneak preview, but shh, don't tell anyone. Top secret official orders. To Lieutenant James Cook, your top secret mission. You are to proceed to the southward in order to make discovery of the southern continent unless you sooner fall in with it. But not having discovered it or in any evident signs of it, you are to proceed in search of it to the westward until you discover it or fall in with the coast of New Zealand. Signed, the British government. P.S. Then you can come home. P.P.S. Don't tell anyone about this, or else. Ooh, what an interesting message, huh? What on earth was this southern continent, and where on earth was it? And exactly why was it such a big secret? Here's Miles to spill the beans. Remember Miles, our travel companion? It's actually Antarctica. The ancient Greeks guessed Antarctica existed, though they'd never actually been there. They reckoned there must be a big chunk of land in the south to balance the big chunk in the north. On early maps, it was called Terra Australis Incognita, which means unknown southern land. But it was so far away from that for centuries no Europeans were keen to go looking for it. Now that many of the gaps in the map have been filled in, explorers and governments turned their sights south. And now the race was well and truly on to see who could find the mysterious continent first. An epic voyage. In August 1768, Cook set sail on the Endeavour, a sturdy coal ship. On board were 97 men, including a whole bunch of boring scientists. One of the scientists was top British botanist, a scientist who studies plants, Joseph Banks. When he wasn't being seasick, he spent his time leafing through botany books and collecting thousands of new types of plants. He took along 4 servants to help him sort the specimens out. Banks was also the first scientist from Europe to see a kangaroo. He must have jumped with joy, and then he shot it and ate it for his tea. Anyone for a kangaroo sandwich? After a horribly hard and dangerous journey, the Endeavour reached Tahiti in April 1769. Even the suffering scientists perked up a bit. They built an observatory and unpacked their telescopes and instruments. Then, on June 3rd, the moment they'd been waiting for arrived at last. The weather was perfect, and they watched in amazement as Venus moved across the sun. Cosmic! It was so incredibly exciting, Cook almost forgot the crumpled envelope in his pocket. His hands trembled as he read its secret's contents. There was no time to lose. In July, the Endeavour set sail again and headed south, and further south. But there was no sign of any secret southern continent. Instead, Cook kept the crew busy drawing up brand new maps of Australia and New Zealand. It was a long, painstaking job. Then, in June the following year, disaster struck. The Endeavour hit a coral reef, which gashed a gaping hole in its side. Quick-thinking Cook patched the ship up with a spare sail and a load of sheep's poop. Then he managed to sail to Indonesia, where it was repaired. On July 12, 1771, the Endeavour finally made it home after 3 thrilling years at sea. True, Cook hadn't discovered a new continent, but he had visited places never seen before and earned his place in the geography books. He was given a hero's welcome and a well-earned promotion. Now here we have a map of his very first voyage. His second voyage, 1772 to 1775. It wasn't long before Cook was off again with 2 new ships to search for the southern continent. It was a truly treacherous trip. But they sailed further and further south. The weather turned bitterly cold and the sea was littered with lethal icebergs. One false move in a thick fog and the ships would have been scuppered. All this left crestfallen Cook convinced that there was no way Antarctica could exist. And even if it did, there was no way anyone could reach it. Dejectedly, he wrote in his diary, "I had now made the circuit of the Southern Ocean, and traversed it in such a manner as to leave not the least room for the possibility of there being a continent, unless near the pole, or out of reach of navigation." So his second voyage. He looks a little down. He saw no reason, he added, why anyone should want to sail in these cold and dangerous waters again. Nope, Antarctica definitely wasn't top of his list of places to go on holidays. Back home, Cook tried to take his mind off things by writing a paper about scurvy. Horrible health warning number 2. Scurvy was a dreadful disease suffered by sailors. It was caused by not eating enough vital vitamin C, found in fresh fruit and vegetables. Its sickening symptoms began with your gums, right here, swelling up so your teeth fell out when you tried to eat. Then you grew woefully weak and ill and died a painful, painful death. Caring Cook devised a cunning plan for keeping the deadly disease at bay. He made his unfortunate crew scoff platefuls of pickled cabbage. And you thought school dinners were bad. Another crazy cure was to rub your gums with wee. Later, it was found that drinking lemon or lime juice did the trick. Now come on, eat up your greens. Third voyage, 1776 to 1779. For his third voyage, Cook planned to search for a sea route across the top of North America. Things started off swimmingly. Instead of a boring sea route, he discovered the idyllic holiday islands of Hawaii. Here we go, route number 3. The Hawaiians were very friendly and declared Cook a god. But even gods cannot say they're welcome, especially if food is running short. After months on the island, the locals were fed up with the sailors and wanted them to leave. On February 14th, 1779, Cook was stabbed and killed in a bad-tempered skirmish on the beach. His body was buried at sea. Amazingly, clever Cook was the first sailor to know where on earth he was. This was thanks to a brilliant new device called a marine chronometer. Chronometer. It was invented by English clockmaker John Harrison and was like a clock for measuring longitude, how far east or west you were. If you knew your longitude and your latitude, how far north and south you were, you could pinpoint exactly where you were on the globe. Pity suffering sailors couldn't do this before. Horrible geographers agree that Cook was the most intrepid sailor of his day. His pioneering voyages covered thousands of kilometers and opened up vast parts of the world. But have you seen enough of the sea? Do you fancy going somewhere hot and sunny? somewhere so scorching it'll fry your brains and drive you mad with thirst. Don't forget to pack sunscreen. You'll need it where we're off to next.